Hi, Gemma.
Hi, Josh. How are you?
I'm really good. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Thank you. Doing
Thank-
well.
Thanks so much for joining us. It's great to talk to you as always.
Thank you for inviting me. Absolutely. Give me a chance to talk, Josh, and I'll take it.
That's what I figured, actually. Just
Yeah, love it.
I'm like so looking forward to this conversation. You've been in the industry for a long time. We've each known each other for a long time. I think you've had just such an awesome career in the early talent space, and working in such a fascinating part of the world in early careers at the moment, which is being based out of Singapore and looking after Asia Pac. Throw in over the top of that what's happening with COVID. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting into this. So thanks again for your time.
Not a problem.
You studied tourism at university in Tasmania in Australia. Fast forward, a handful of years, and you're running early talent for Salesforce across Asia Pac. What happened?
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually a very good question. I do get asked this quite often. Bachelor of Tourism is a bit of a bizarre program to have studied full stop, really. And to be honest with you, it was a new program, and it ended within a couple of years of it starting at the University of Tasmania. And I think I was just one of those kids who just had no idea what I really wanted to do. And that actually has shaped where I am today. So when I finished university, it was the early 2000s. I lived in Tasmania. There was really not a lot of private industry. Main employers were government. I studied tourism because I thought that was going to be the industry that would sustain the Tasmanian economy, which it pretty much has. But then I chose to move interstate, and I moved to Melbourne as soon as my degree was done. And without a network and without a degree that really qualified me for nothing, it was a very difficult few years where I was sort of going between lots of different things. I worked in call centres, which actually was some really great experience. And I started my first career job, I suppose you'd call it, actually in a corporate management trainee program with Intercontinental Hotels Group. So sort of hospitality, which was not what my degree was at all, but it was a graduate program. It was a great opportunity. I got to rotate around the hotel, all the different operations. But even with great opportunities, when you're 22, 23 years of age, you just don't realize it. So moved into, sort of event management and did lots of things in that space as well. And was just one of those people that was always looking for the thing that would put the fire in my belly. And it wasn't until I got a job with the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Australia, which is now the CAANZ, in their careers marketing team in Melbourne, that I found a passion for engaging with young people on careers. I'd had a really challenging start to my professional career. I'd made some really silly decisions and some really quick sort of unexplored decisions that just I really hadn't spent a lot of time thinking about. And I had found a channel to help others who were in that position. And as part of that role, I spent quite a bit of time on campus with students and with career centres, but I also supported the accounting profession with attracting young people to their organisations as well. And it was through that I connected with HR and did some study in HR, and was very lucky that an HR team in an accounting firm saw some transferable skills. I built a great network. I worked really hard and was able to demonstrate my transferable skills and was asked to come across into their HR function.
Right.
And that was really, I guess, a pivotal moment. I looked after their grad and their intern program end to end. So, marketing, brand, recruitment. And that was back in the days where you'd print off hundreds and hundreds of resumes, physical resumes, and would have a stack of them high, and would, put a red marker number on how much we'd rate that candidate. And from there, it really went from strength to strength. I'd really found what I loved doing. And
yeah.
I've done broader HR roles, but I've always come back to the early talent space.
And while you might have made some silly decisions early on, and they teach us things, right? We've all done that. I've made many of those. You've made some really smart decisions since. I mean, so I think the accounting firm you're probably talking about is BDO. You went on to Baker and Mackenzie, a big law firm in Australia, then 6 or 7 years at Deloitte. So you kind of had a real span there in professional services. Jump on a plane, go to Singapore, land yourself at SAP and now Salesforce, both in the tech kind of space. So, I mean, quite a journey over a number of years. If you think about your kind of time in, broadly speaking, professional services, Deloitte, law, accounting, etc., and then your time in tech, and the time in tech has been in Asia as well, through that lens. What have those two different sets of experiences, I guess, taught you, or how have they? How do you think about the industry and the world as a result?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's an interesting one, because I think it's funny. I think you could go from professional services into tech, and it's a big jump. It is a really big jump. I think if you were to go from tech into professional services, it would be a lot more challenging. So at least I think I've done them around the right way. And I think, you know, having been in professional services yourself, you know that it is a very unique industry, and you either love it or you struggle with it, really. There's very little grey in professional services. And I think the passion for that industry really came from the start of my career, which again, at the time, I didn't think was a great opportunity, but working in hotels and working in customer service, we were governed by what we could wear, how many earrings, you know, rings, makeup, hair, you know, the way that we looked had to be really well crafted. The service delivery had to be impeccable, and everything we did was about putting ourselves in the guest's shoes. And when you think about it, that was almost 20 years ago, and hospitality was probably one of the first industries that really did that customer-centric design and thought process really well. I was doing TQM, total quality management projects, where we were putting ourselves in the customer's shoes, you know, back in the early 2000s. And so I think that experience aligned really well with professional services, because the product is your, you know, use your brains and your experience and the value that you've got to add with customers through the experience and that you've gained. And customers are everything. So if you're not delivering for your customer and you're not actually understanding what the customer wants and the value that you can bring them, then you're not going to be successful in professional services. So I think the fact that I had such a strong service mindset from those early hospitality days probably meant that professional services was a really good fit for me. You know, it's taught me so much about not perfectionism, but delivering at an absolute top standard. You know, you wouldn't have delivered anything in professional services unless it was at exceptional standard. I wasn't delivering to an external customer per se, but I was delivering to internal customers, and we would treat them in exactly the same way as the business would treat their paying customers. So, you know, and it taught me to work hard. And I was at a point in my life through all of those experiences where I could work really, really hard. And that was by choice, as well as by naturally that environment really sort of fosters that. And tech has been a massive shift, not because I don't work hard in tech, but from a business model perspective, that has been like, you know, 180-degree shift kind of thing, you know, going from a knowledge business to a product business has been huge. And thinking that I was part of something big in professional services, when you actually go to a truly global organization like an SAP with 100,000 people in one organization, with multiple mergers and acquisitions coming in quite regularly, and bolt-ons and add-ons, and truly working globally across the US and Europe. I mean, that was a huge adjustment for me, and I couldn't quite understand why there was never an org chart. You know, in professional services, you've got an org chart, you've got the business units, and even though there's multiple teams within those business units, you can visually understand what that organization looks like. Whereas at SAP, in the 18 months I was there, you know, everyone just tried to get me around to thinking, you're never going to see one, you're never going to see one. And that was really hard for me. But I think the benefit of the shift has been that it has challenged me to learn a really new industry. I wanted to get into tech because I grew up I had my teenager years in the 90s with that generation and Josh, you might be the same, with that generation, that the last generation who grew up kind of without technology, but now have to fully embrace it in our working life. And, you know, we had Game Boys or whatever, but beyond that, you know, being in Tasmania in the 90s, we didn't have access to internet. I mean, I didn't get access to dial-up internet till the late 90s. You know, I was listening to cassettes at university if I missed a lecture in the late 90s. So, you know, I wanted to join tech because I wanted to be pushed and I wanted to learn, and I wanted to be a part of something that I really knew nothing about and made me feel really uncomfortable. And I think the last thing, look, I mean, particularly Salesforce has taught me a lot about being me and just the value that I can bring just for who I am, what my strengths are, you know, the passions that I have. And that fits in really, really well at Salesforce. You know, the level of collaboration, I can now actually put together a document and just send it to my manager, or actually I just tag her because we've got great collaboration tools. I just tag her, and it doesn't have to be 90% finished. It doesn't even have to be 75% finished. It's just a, hey, what do you think? This is where I'm starting from. You know, so it's been a really nice evolution as I get older to transition from something that's a little bit more corporate to now being something where I can come into my own and use my strengths and my passions and my experience in an environment that's a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah, I can imagine. If I think about that journey from something like the Intercontinental Hotel Group, and it must have been, I didn't know you'd done that. It must have been about a similar time I was opening car doors and carrying bags in the Starwood hotel chain.
Ah, there you go. Competitors. Yeah, good.
In Sydney, yes, competitors. But you were very much, it was polish, right? Like it was,
Yep.
it was all polish, and the customer was king, and service was everything. You bend over backwards, you know. The answer should always be yes, unless there's a showstopper reason to say to say no. And that, you know, that taught me about, you know, long shifts, lots of bags, lots of car doors, etc. That taught me about hard work as well. But it also actually taught me that it was okay to fail. I remember when I welcomed an elderly couple into the hotel, and got the bags out of the boot, took the bag round, opened the door while they were paying for the taxi. There was a trick in the trade. You'd always read the name on the bag tag. So if you ever pull into a nice hotel and they already know your name when you get out of the car, that's how. You read the name on the bag tag while they're paying for the taxi. You say,
good to know. Good
evening, Mrs. Hudson. And they go, oh, wow, how good are you? I'm like, well, it's on your bag, but I'm not going to tell you. Yeah. Anyway, so I welcomed this elderly couple into the hotel, and sadly, they'd had been on a really long trip from the US, I think it was, and they had like 9 bags, except I didn't know there was 9. I only got 8 out, and the taxi pulled away. Turns out the 9th bag was a little green bag about this week that had the husband's medication in it. It was a bag full of medication. Oh my goodness, what an absolute disaster of a shift. But I tell you what, I learned so much about myself and customer service, but also about management and culture, because I got pulled aside and spoken to. And the message was, everyone makes mistakes. It's okay. When it comes to leaving customers' guest bags in taxis, we've all done it. We've all got our horror stories. Here's the deal. You get one. That's your one.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
And get on with it and forget about it. And nothing more was said. I just thought that was such a brilliant, you know, yes, we make mistakes. It's okay. That particular one, never again, please. Right. But
that was the same for us. It was cars though. We had a very tight car park downstairs, so there were several conversations with customers about the state of their cars after they had been parked in the downstairs car park. So, but yes, you're right. Those situations were terrible, and you felt awful, and you just, you know, you had to front up and admit it to the customer. But from an organizational point of view, you're right. It was a, you know, don't do it again. You know, these things happen, but don't do it again. We've got mechanisms in place to deal with it, but don't do it again.
And then similar to you, as you mentioned, I went into professional services, which is also about polish and customer first and getting things right, and which teaches you a lot as well. And I guess I've gone into business, you've gone on to tech. And so I guess there's kind of a release there in some respects of then having to be, you know, in a 5-star hotel and everything has to be perfect, through to, I guess, where you are to now. And you made a really interesting point that you can kind of just be yourself, and who you are and what that brings is more than enough. How is that kind of journey, I guess, taught you about the early career space? What do you love about the early career space, and what maybe frustrates you a bit about it?
I think what it's taught me, I've always made, particularly in my later career, I've made very conscious decisions about what next to do. So I've done the grass is greener, that job looks good, I'm going to go for it. And the last sort of 10, 12 years of my career have been much more consciously making decisions about what's next. So I've done both. And I think, what I've learned about early careers is what people actually really want, what they truly, really want is help making those really big milestone decisions, or somebody to be the person, the non-judgmental person, to help them to articulate and to be vulnerable and brave about these types of decisions they're making along the way in their career journey. And I find that because I've done that so many times at different milestones in my life, it's a really big value add to give back to these young people who now have so many more options than I do and so many more resources at their fingertips, which sounds great, but actually creates a lot of anxiety and pressure, as well. And look, what do I love about the early talent industry? I mean, I've made very conscious decisions the last few years to remain in this industry. I think the great things about it are the people, the friendships. I've been, I think I've been to, you've probably been to around the same number. I think I've been to coming out to 12 AAGEs or, whatever. And every single time you're welcomed with open arms, and there are relationships there that I've fostered over many years. And there are some that are brand new, and that everyone would be willing to, take the shirt off their back to help you and to share and to do as much as they can to get you on your journey. And I love that about our industry. It's got a really strong identity within it, and a sense of pride within it as well, which I love. And I love that you can be jack of all trade. You can be highly specialized in a particular area of HR. Early talent is a very specialized part of talent. And sometimes that can be a negative thing, but for me, it's allowed me a platform to build up expertise and a brand. But at the same time, it allows you to be an expert or to be a jack of all trades across branding, across engagement, across recruitment, across process, across stakeholder engagement, strategy building, operational delivery, team management, development, enablement, technical learning. You're specialized, but you also get exposure to so much more than just a really specialist niche of HR. And I think that's what I love about it, because yes, I'm currently in a development role or a program management role. This is my first time I've actually been in a program management role. I've always been on the front end, so the branding and the engagement, the recruitment side of things. But I love every aspect of what we do. I've always been very passionate about how organizations build strategy around getting young people into the organization and aligning that with business outcomes. And I've always loved the highly process-driven process of how do you create a recruitment process and get all these people through and in a really engaging, wonderful way, and how do you get your team on board with that and all those kinds of things. I've loved it all. So it actually makes it really difficult. I actually don't know if I'm a development program management person or whether I'm a recruitment brand engagement person at the moment. I just love so many different aspects of it, and I can't imagine doing anything else, which is a bit of a problem when your age starts getting, sort of well and truly above, I'm sort of dealing, working with 22, 23-year-olds at the moment and sort of looking down to going into a new age bracket myself. And it's just a bit, how long can this actually last for? But I think that, I think the things that I find really frustrating as well is that we don't really get, I don't feel that our industry has the platform within business and within HR to be seen as strategically kind of aligned to the business as what we could. And I think that's partly our fault as an industry. I don't think we challenge ourselves enough to have those conversations and to get the sponsors to allow us to have those conversations. I think we do see ourselves as being quite a cyclical operational function within the business. So I think that's one of the things that I do find frustrating. And I do find it a bit frustrating that we tend to stick to what we know rather than really thinking about What does business and talent look like in 5, 10, 15 years? Let's challenge our business sponsors and our leaders to really think differently and to engage in different practices.
So thinking about, I guess, the impact of COVID-19, and particularly from the human kind of aspect, two questions for you. The first one is, you look at your programs, lots of different cohorts, lots of different countries around Asia, India, Southeast Asia, and so on. How are you seeing the young people, the grads themselves, respond, I guess, in a human way? And then where do you think we're going on the development front, sort of post-COVID, whenever that is, if that ever happens? But first of all, how are your grads responding in the different cultures and countries?
Yeah, I think they're actually doing a lot better than a lot of us are. And I've done quite a lot of reflection about this the last couple of months in particular, because I'm having some of my own perceptions, I guess, or conscious or unconscious bias actually challenged, because as I said, this is the first time that I'm managing graduates on a program as opposed to engaging and recruiting and bringing them into the organisation. And I mean, I'm just blown away. They teach me so much more than I'm ever able to facilitate in their learning. And quite often I need them more than they need me, and that I love the connectivity and the engagement and the fun that you get from working with young people at the beginning of their profession and the beginning of their working lives every day. So I definitely learn a lot from them. I think I've got cohorts at various different stages of their learning journey. I've got some who are coming towards the end of their first year. I've got some who are in their 4th month, who only ever had 6 weeks in the office before they moved into lockdown at home. Mm-hmm. And then I've also got 2 cohorts coming in India and Singapore in the next couple of months. So, each one of them are dealing with things a little bit differently because they're at very different stages in their journey. Those who have just come on board in ANZ in February, I would have expected that they would be the ones that are struggling, but actually they were able to build such a strong cohort and connection as a social group in that short amount of time, and we really focused on that in those first few weeks, that has really stuck with them through this period. And because they're agile digital learners and they've always learnt in that way through university and whatever, the biggest adjustment for them has been the lack of physical connectivity in the office. We're very lucky as an organisation. We're fully enabled virtually. We always have been. That's not new for us. And so life has kind of gone, apart from the fact that they're stuck at home and whatever, life has gone on kind of normally. They're still working directly with the business, still working with our customers, still able to access all of our onboarding and enablement, because that's all virtually, really delivered anyway through our certifications and Trailhead. So they're great. And they have, we call them grad days. They're development days that grads own. They design the program and the content themselves. And some of the things that they've been able to do virtually is just incredible. They've painted canvases together. They've created solar lights for remote communities who don't have access to electricity. Some of the things that they're thinking about that they can do still in this time is really incredible. I'm just amazed at that. The cohorts that have been around for a lot longer, I mean, life, they were always able to work from home, I guess, if they needed to anyway. Those that are used to being on client side have certainly had to make a big adjustment. But again, I think we're very lucky at Salesforce. We call it the Ohana, the social connections and the family orientation. That is what underpins what brings us all together as an organisation, and that Ohana is really a big priority for the organisation and a big priority for the grad program at this point in time. Like, if I did nothing except made sure that the connectivity and the engagement between the cohort and the rest of the business, as long as that's going well, then over this period, then that would be considered to be a success for us. Yeah. And then those coming in who are about to come in, of course, are very, very nervous. And at this point in time, they have no visibility to what they're coming into. They don't know if they're going to be in the office, doing it virtually from home, I've got some who are relocating away from home in India. They don't know if they're going to be relocating when. There's all these uncertainties for them. So for that group, very naturally, they are anxious. And so we're doing what we can to help them with those anxieties, but we also don't know the answers to a lot of their questions at this point in time. So that's also difficult as well, because I think the greatest thing that young people are having to get comfortable with at this point is that leaders, managers, organisations don't have all the answers right now. And in fact, never have done, but it's become a lot more apparent to them now, and they understand and they see that, the impact of and the reality of organisations, operating in these really dynamic environments and not being able to make fully rational decisions based on all of the information all at one time. So I think they're doing an amazing job. I think I've really had my views on young people challenged. I'd love to write some content on it at some point, because I think that they're really doing an amazing job, and I think we don't give them enough credit for that, or credibility.
That's really interesting. Do you think, particularly with the existing cohorts, and you're saying they were responding really well and being sort of agile and resilient, but I also noticed you said you've actually given them responsibility for the content of their grad days. Do you think that's helping? Do you think that's maybe helping them sort of be in control of the development and their kind of experience at the moment?
Yeah. Yeah, look, there's a large component of their learning and their roles that they can't control. There's a lot of technical content at Salesforce that we all, regardless of your role, need to know about the product and that kind of thing, which is amazing. It's great. But where we can allow them some ownership and flexibility, I think it gives them, we do it for multiple reasons. One of them being is that it gives them ownership and accountability, which then makes them much more engaged and interested, and really thinking about what do we want to learn, what do we need to learn, what's a nice to have but is a really great thing, for us to spoil ourselves a little bit with. Like with last week's grad day in Australia was all focused around self and understanding self. And they chose that. That wasn't me saying, that's what you need to do, but it's just given them that level of responsibility and ownership over it, which is great. And the other part of it is that they need to manage a budget, they need to manage a program, they need to engage speakers. There's event management, there's program management, there's team collaboration. So we really design the concept of committees to really give them ownership over aspects of the program, including their development, which is, it's been great pre-COVID, and it's really, continued on well through COVID, where they feel that sense of ownership and accountability over driving their own learning.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's so good. And then you think about the future. What impact do you think this whole coronavirus and everything it's done with the world in the past sort of 4 or 5 months, what do you think the influence will be on the future of development programs?
I think it gives us more avenues. I did a LinkedIn post last week. I delivered my first 2 programs virtually the last 2 weeks, and was amazed by the value that the participants or my grads still got out of it, and that I got out of it, and the satisfaction that I got out of it from seeing them learn. So I think it's opened up a lot of options, and I think that's great. And I think what we will need to do moving forward is really sit down as program teams and go, what is the value of getting people together and looking at our program frameworks and skills, technical, non-technical, that people need to learn, and go, really, where can this virtual thing align and actually provide greater value or efficiency or connect people where we wouldn't normally have been able to connect people. Why can't you deliver a virtual development program between the UK and Australia, allowing our cohorts to actually get greater connectivity and that kind of thing? So I think it gives us a lot more option and breadth of option. But I think it's also reinforced to us the power of social and being physically present together. And I think what we'll do is we'll just get a lot better at selecting the delivery method based on what we're trying to get out of that particular intervention or experience for people. And I'd say the other thing too, that's, you know, a consequence of that is it frees up some of our travel budget, T&E budget for people though as well, you know, and I noticed that Nick said that last week as well. I definitely don't think that it's going to remove the need to be present with each other, but I do think it means that you can kind of go, well, if we don't need to do it and we're not getting as much value out of that, how could we redirect that funding and those resources elsewhere to create impact as well?
Yeah, I think you're right on the money there. It's amazing how quickly virtual learning has become credible. And it's fascinating for us in the seats that we're in, because we've been doing virtual masterclasses and 1 hour sessions and 90-minute sessions for a good 3 years now, and they've always been sort of sprinkled along a journey in addition to the face-to-face. So the face-to-face is what anchored it, and then you sort of sprinkle virtual masterclasses throughout to add to it or as another touch point along the way. It was always an addition, or it was an alternative. It was never almost never first choice. And we're really interested now to see in what sectors and what organizations actually move to a place where virtual is first choice, because of the scalability, the cost effectiveness, you can drip a lot more content into a young person's life more frequently at less time off desk and all that sort of stuff, and then maybe treat the face-to-face as the premium. You know, you bring people together to look back on what have you learned and what does the next part of the journey look like, and meet with senior leaders rather than the other way around. Like the face-to-face gets added on top rather than the virtual being added on top. I think there's potential. I think there's definitely potential for that. And there are already parts of the sector in different regions who are literally just waiting to get back to normal, where we don't have to do virtual, we can get back to face-to-face. So I think there's going to be some real movement.
I think it presents a challenge as well, though, right? Because then you've got to work out what is the right mix and what does that look like. And to be honest with you, you know, we're currently doing virtual with cohorts that have already got a physical connection to the brand, to the office, to their co-workers, you know, even if it's only 4 or 5 weeks in the office. You know, we're about to start cohorts in July that won't have had any of that physical connection with us, and so that's going to be another part of my learning journey and trying to work out, well, how do you create the ohana that is so important to us at Salesforce through never having met someone. So look, it's going to be a challenge, and one thing I will say is death by PowerPoint, or you know, is definitely not, you know, ever going to be the way. I think when we're talking about virtual, you know, we really have to think about, well, how can you still create that really positive learning environment and engaging learning environment?
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. I think it's also going to be fascinating once we start getting graduate cohorts through who completed major parts of their degree virtually. You know, once you hit this critical mass of university students doing entire semesters and getting entire sets of credit points, having never stepped foot on campus, I think there's a tipping point there in terms of acceptability and thirst for virtual stuff.
And then think about, you know, I mean, because the workplace is not always going to be virtual. Think about the deficit of, you know, skills, face-to-face skills at that point, you know. So look, it brings up a whole new set of challenges and opportunities, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we might start to wrap it up there. I do have 10 questions for you to find out just a little bit more about Gemma on the Gemma Hudson on the human side. Thank you so much for spending the time. I know it's quite late at night.
No, you're very welcome. It's been a pleasure.
And I'm sure everyone, I know I've really appreciated talking to you, and I'm sure everyone has enjoyed listening as well. So let's wrap it up with your top 10. Here we go. Your favourite food?
This is actually a bit of a challenge for me. I see food more as a mechanism for fuel rather than for an enjoyment. I know that's a challenge. I know. But I do like Mexican. I do like tacos, really good tacos. So, yeah. I'm not a massive food lover.
Favourite drink? What? Water, just to keep you going?
No, this one was actually one that I've got 3.
Never mind the food, bring on the drink. Coffee?
Yes, exactly. Coffee. And then when it's no longer acceptable to drink coffee, I'm on to wine, particularly Australian wine and gin. Singapore's not a great location to enjoy wine, so gin has been my drink of choice.
Right. Once it becomes acceptable, so about 1 p.m.
Correct. Totally.
Favourite exercise?
Definitely loving weight-based work in the gym at the moment, doing lots of strength stuff, which I love, but nothing beats the endorphins from a run. Absolutely.
Favourite band or performer?
Yeah, this is a hard one because it's probably whatever the kids are enjoying at the time. But maybe Lady Gaga. She's pretty impressive.
Most influential book you've read?
I'm not really a very good book reader, Josh. Not because I don't enjoy them, but since having kids, I can't actually focus for that long at a time. So I actually value conversation. So the more influential things for me are more blog posts and conversations. Yep.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I'll let you off on that one. That's good.
Great. Thank you.
The career moment you're most proud of?
Creating something in Asia when I had nothing in Asia. Yep.
One thing you would love to change in the world?
Judgmental people. I think that particularly as a woman and as a mother, I think that we do a lot of judging, which leads to awful situations. So yeah, the removal of any sort of judgment would be amazing.
If you could have dinner with one person, who would it be, dead or alive?
Right this very moment, I would choose my mother-in-law. I miss her dearly. I know most people wouldn't choose their mother-in-law. I know. I miss her dearly, and I would love some time away from the kids and from my husband, who I've spent every day with for the last sort of 2 or 3 months or so. So yeah, I'd love to have dinner with my mother-in-law. That's
fine. I'm sure you won't see this. It's on LinkedIn and social media. The last gift you gave somebody?
Super Mario Kart remote control car. My youngest son turned 3 recently, so we've been having some fun with Super Mario on the Switch, and so we got him a remote control car. Yeah.
And the thing you are most proud of overall?
Would definitely have to be what my husband and I have achieved in life. I know that's very deep and meaningful, isn't it? But we've done a lot. We've been through a lot. We've had kids. We've made a life for ourselves in another country. All those kinds of things. I think when you do that in partnership with someone else, I think that's something to be fairly proud of.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Gemma. I really appreciate your time. It's been an absolute joy.
No, thanks for having me, Josh. Thank you.